25 years ago, people were buying tickets just to see a trailer, raiding Toys R Us at midnight, and camping outside cinemas for a month just because of a single movie, Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. And in this video, we're going to be celebrating its 25th anniversary by looking back at all the pre-release buzz, the avalanche of merchandise, and the experience of being around when The Phantom Menace ruled the world. Now, rumors of the Star Wars prequels date back to 1980 when Episode 5 first popped up on the opening crawl of The Empire Strikes Back. Around that time, George Lucas would often talk about his plans for a 9-movie saga. However, after Return of the Jedi, the series would go on an indefinite hiatus, leaving fans waiting for a proper return to the galaxy far, far away while they watched creepy Ewoks in Caravan of Courage. Their hopes would finally be answered in 1993 when George Lucas officially confirmed that he would begin work on a prequel trilogy, with Episode 1 being released before the end of the decade. And so the rumor mill began to churn, and even in its early state, the internet was full of speculation, insider scoops, and leaks. June 96, George Lucas was in Scotland last week at the casting auditions for an actor portraying an unmasked Boba Fett, who's Vader's right-hand man to assassinate the remainder of the Jedi Knights during the Clone Wars. Lucasfilm would officially fire up the hype machine in 97 by creating a special page on StarWars.com dedicated to Episode 1. This page would be filled with concept art, production updates, and stills from the actual movie. However, the hype would reach a whole other level in November of 98. The Episode 1 teaser trailer would become an event in itself. Again, this was before the days of being able to stream trailers to your smartphone, so countless fans would pay full admission just to see the trailer and then walk out. Some have estimated that a big chunk of Meet Joe Black's box office was due to having the Phantom Menace trailer run in front of it. In late April of 99, Lucasfilm would host the very first Star Wars celebration in Denver, Colorado, which had a major focus on Episode 1. There were life-size pod racers, Ray Park showed off some moves with a giant blade, and Jake Lloyd cut down Anthony Daniels. Shame about the horrible weather though. Tickets for Episode 1 would go on sale in early May, but fans had already begun to queue outside theaters a month before, resulting in these iconic tent shanty towns outside US cinemas in the spring of 99.
This is the movie event of the decade.
And then we had the merchandise. No movie before or after had the sheer avalanche of merchandise like Episode 1.
What do you expect? It's the best movie of the century.
And of course, the merch most of us associate with The Phantom Menace are the action figures. Now, by the late 90s, every movie had an action figure. What's wrong, Billy? You've hardly played with your John Shaft with 5 points of articulation, but the original Star Wars was the movie that made tie-in action figures mainstream, and The Phantom Menace took it to a whole other level by having 50 different figures. This line literally had every character in the movie, from the main cast to the pod racers to the Jedi Council members, featuring John Shaft. They even made figures for characters like Rick O'Lee, C.O. Bibble, and TC-14 with never mind. Now, this huge range of figures made it very difficult for the grandparents at Christmas. Poor Granny lived through the Blitz. She couldn't tell the difference between Darth Maul with the double-bladed lightsaber and Newt Gunray, and unfortunately, I was one of the many children who became victims of this confusion. Instead of getting Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, I got the dynamic duo of Chancellor Valorum and Rune Harko. What a great buddy cop show they made. This pair went on so many adventures together. Now, all of these figures were just the basic line. You also had the vehicle and the creature lines. For example, remember that time in the movie where Qui-Gon bought a poncho that was way too big for him? Or when he jumped out of the bongo and tried to Moby Dick the big fish? You also had these cinema scenes. Remember all the fun times you had playing in Watto's box with this guy and the space stripper? However, the action figures were just a small part of the Episode 1 merchandise behemoth. We had mugs, keyrings, watches, electronic games, walkie-talkies, chess sets, battleship games, cups, t-shirts, hats, toothbrushes, and N1 Starfighter slippers. But even all of these are just the tip of the Episode 1 merchandising iceberg. How about the Darth Maul Rubik's Cube, the infamous Jar Jar lollipop where you've got to suck on his tongue, or the Jabba that vomits green goo? How about the Jedi braid? Feel the power of the Force, clip the braid over your ear and become a courageous Jedi Knight. No? Well, maybe I could interest you in this Chancellor Valorum 12-inch doll. Or Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon and Darth Maul at this warehouse rave. Naturally, Jar Jar also wanted in on the action, so he got his own dancing figure too. Cute plush toys like Beanie Babies were all the rage in the 90s, so Lucasfilm decided to get in on the craze with their most adorable character.
Look at me, aren't I cute? Come on, I'm bendable, buy me with only money.
Other notable examples include the Darth Maul makeup kit, the Royal Starship answering machine, and the Jar Jar sticky tongue. In addition to their own products, Lucasfilm also did a bunch of licensing deals with established brands. You had the Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC kids meal toys, which would spawn this ad of the Colonel with a lightsaber fighting the droid army. You also have the collectible Pepsi cans, but the biggest and most impactful licensing deal was with the Lego Company. Star Wars was one of the first licensed themes for LEGO, and Episode 1 made up 8 of the original 13 launch sets. Now, the LEGO Star Wars partnership would become a juggernaut in its own right, but it all started with little Annie, who was the same height as 6'4" Qui-Gon Jinn. Lucas Publishing also went all out for the movie. We had the comic book adaptation. What's wrong with Anakin's face? He's not supposed to burn until the 3rd movie. Now, the actual panel art is much better. It's pretty much a scene-for-scene adaptation of the movie, but the prologue does add a few new scenes, like Anakin meeting the deep space pilot. There was also a novelization by Terry Brooks, which I always thought was great because it was really able to flesh out both the plot and characters. We get a bit more foreshadowing of Anakin's descent to the dark side, the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan is better established, plus the novel provides backstory to the Sith and Darth Bane establishing the Rule of Two, which apparently came from George himself. By the time the movie hit US theaters on May 19th, the Episode 1 mania was in full swing. It was estimated that 2.2 million in the US alone missed work to see the movie, causing some companies to just shut down on that day. The Phantom Menace was everywhere: television, newspapers, vending machines. This guy's back. It even penetrated the music industry when the Duel of the Fates music video saw extensive airplay on MTV. Weird Al would rewrite the lyrics to American Pie around the plot of Episode 1 with his parody song The Saga Begins. And to this day, I still sing his lyrics when the actual song comes on. Now, a portion of the older generation did have issues with the movie, which they were very vocal about for the next 2 decades.
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
However, if you were a kid in '99, chances were you thought the Phantom Menace was the coolest thing on Earth. Playgrounds all around the world were filled with children beating each other with sticks as we tried to reenact the Duel of the Fates. Exercise books were covered with doodles of the N1 Starfighter, and we suddenly developed an interest in the ladies' Gillette shavers. Of course, most of us kids couldn't go to the cinema 10 times on opening week like the grown-up fans, but thankfully we could continue the experience at home through video games. And unsurprisingly, the Phantom Menace went big on games. LucasArts would release 9 completely different Episode 1 tie-in games over the span of 3 years. Now, I've already made several videos covering these games in detail, so I'll be brief. Released one day before the movie for the PlayStation and PC, we had the official Phantom Menace tie-in game, aka Gungan Murder Simulator, aka Mos Espa Murder Simulator, aka Captain Panaka's Big Day Out. The same day also saw the release of Racer, a high-speed arcade game in the style of F-Zero and Wipeout. The following year saw the release of Jedi Power Battles, which reimagined the plot and settings of the movie as a 2-player platforming beat-em-up that just so happened to be one of the hardest games ever made and the cause of many sibling arguments. This was followed by Obi-Wan's Adventure for the Game Boy Color and Battle for Naboo, an arcade-style flight game from the makers of Rogue Squadron, which follows a group of royal soldiers during the invasion of Naboo. The launch of the 6th generation of consoles would see even more Episode 1 tie-in games, starting with Starfighter, which had you control a group of renegade pilots in a plot set during the events of Episode 1. This was followed by by Super Bombat Racing, a kart racer where the characters all had gigantic heads. Obi-Wan was an exclusive title for the original Xbox, which had you play as the titular character through the events leading up to and during the Phantom Menace. And the final Episode 1 tie-in game, released only 3 months before Attack of the Clones, was Racer Revenge, a sequel to the original Racer with better graphics, new planets, and characters. Wow, that's a lot of video games, but it definitely gave us something to do while we waited for the movie to come out on home video. And it was a pretty long wait. The VHS for Episode 1 wouldn't release until April of 2000. That's 11 months after the theatrical release, which, when you're 8 years old, might as well be a decade. And of course, everybody knew that one rich kid in school who had the 2-tape edition. In October of 2000, Lucasfilm would release Episode 1 on DVD, and this was the holy grail for many of us. Not only was the movie slightly extended, but it also had a second disc packed with behind-the-scenes content, including The Beginning, which to this day is one of the best making-of documentaries ever. And this was the marketing genius of Lucasfilm. By staggering out the home video and video game releases, they were able to prolong Episode 1's life cycle all the way to Episode 2, but that's a topic for another video. For now though, I hope you enjoy this trip down memory lane to a time when the Phantom Menace ruled the world. Please let me know if you'd like to see more videos in this series, and also leave a comment with your thoughts and memories of the Phantom Menace below. As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to all my existing patrons. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.